Hello everyone and welcome to Woopercast. This is episode 29 for January the 2nd, 2017. Happy New Year, Happy Christmas to everyone who celebrates those types of things. As always, I'm your host Joe Yates, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice we actually have some visuals for this week's episode. And that's because I'm going to be going through some of my favorite cards, or some of the biggest talking points at least from the new set, Sun and Moon. It's still a while away from coming out in English, so I'm not doing a full set review today. I'm just going to be picking out some highlights, discussing some cards offhand, and what I think they're going to be like and what they have been like from just initial testing that myself and some friends have done so far. So before we get into everything, a quick shout out to a few things. First of all, the rap went down pretty well amongst everyone who heard it. I don't think I got as much publicity as I would have liked because I uploaded it on Christmas Eve, which is terrible marketing strategy because people are kind of busy at that time of day. There will be another one though. I'm writing one about Yveltal. I do need a beat for it because I can write the lyrics. I'm not much of a producer, I'll be honest with you guys, but it's coming in the works. I hope it'll be up in the next like 2 weeks ish. I don't know when I'm gonna get the time to dedicate to it, but I've got the plan in my head. I just need to sort of sit down and record it and stuff like that. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks I get that out. Let's Play will be starting next week as well. I'm gonna do Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. And on top of all that, yes, I'm going to be doing 2 deck analysis this week that I want to get out. One is going to be coming out either... It's not really a deck analysis. It's about Dragonair. I'll get onto Dragonair in a minute anyway, obviously in the set review, but it's about that. It's going to be more of a kind of a discussion-based video, a bit like the Vileplume Guide to Vileplume that I did a little while ago. Some of you may remember that. That went down pretty well. People seem to enjoy that kind of format, and I'm going to be taking sort of a similar approach with this one. That'll be out either Tuesday or Wednesday, probably Wednesday this week. So, onto the subject at hand. We are talking about Sun and Moon cards, and again, I feel like it's easier to show off visually, so if you're on YouTube, you can watch this just if you want to see what the card does. I will still read it out for everyone who's not on YouTube, because I know I do still get a decent amount of traffic on those kind of platforms as well. So, the first one I obviously wanted to talk about was Luranis GX, as you can see, because my notes are on the screen, so that helps. Again, I'm not going to be going through every single card, just going to go through the ones that are the main talking points. So Luranis GX, 210 hit points. So first of all, it's a GX. It's like an EX, but they can now be evolution Pokemon. They can be stage 1s. Stage 2 is probably restored Pokemon as well, I assume, in the future. So what makes Luranis special? What makes it cool? So first of all, 210 HP is a lot of HP. We all know this. So that we're in Mega territory here, but you don't need a Spirit Link. Forest of Giant Plants exists. You do have to evolve from Fomantis with 60 HP. It does have this cool little attack synthesis, so I guess if you're in a pinch, you can use that to sort of power up if you somehow can't find your evolution Pokemon. Anyway, though, the attack flower supply for 40 damage does attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to Pokemon in any way you like. Solar Blade 120 for Grass Colorless does 30 in damage, heal 30 from it, and you do 120. And Chloro Scythe GX, great name, 50 damage times the number of grass energy attached to you. So, the main thing about this card, I think, is obviously this is an energy accelerator, so people are looking at good partners for it. A lot of people have sort of honed in on things like Mega Venusaur because obviously it needs an unholy amount of grass energy to attack. And I haven't tested that out myself yet. I think that ultimately, is Venusaur worth powering up is a completely different question. Is that what you want to be spending these energy attachments on? Because Lurantis itself, you can obviously attach these to Lurantis. It's a bit like Carbon Break. Solar Blade is not the greatest attack in the world, but I think the biggest thing, or the most effective thing that seems to have been paired with this so far, is actually Vileplume. So in that, you play Vileplume, you play about a decent amount of grass energy, you accelerate it onto Lurantis and your other Pokemon, you have an unholy amount of health, you can evolve first turn with Forest of Giant Plants, so you basically circumnavigate this whole 60 HP thing entirely. It makes a whole lot of sense, and on top of that, you just have really powerful attacks for basic energy under an item lock, which is super, super good. And you can still power up other attackers under item lock, which is something a lot of other item lock decks suffer from. There's a lot of sort of struggle for digging for cards in some Vileplume variants because they obviously can't run. Well, sometimes you don't want to Sycamore away a handful of energy, and you have to just sort of sit there. I think Vileplume is the best partner for it. I know Rory's been testing this a lot, and it's super consistent. It's easy enough to get the energy in the discard pile since you do have to Sycamore away a lot of it. If you run just like, I believe the list at the moment that he's running runs 10. And you will find yourself in positions where your opening hand is just a bunch of energy to Sycamore, and that's what you want, because Flower Supply obviously can recycle those. Basically, it's easy enough to set up. It's a powerful enough attacker under Vileplume lock. They're really just partners that sort of make sense together, just basically based on their synergy comes from Forest to Giant Plants. And from the fact that Vileplume's never really had a great energy and accelerator, and now it kind of does. And 210 HP is such a huge number. And let's not forget that the GX attack, under item lock, your opponent's not going to be powering up like this huge amount of attackers that can like deal a ton of damage. Like if you try and power up like say an Yveltal EX under item lock, you're looking at having to attach a bunch of energy to it, and that's where Chloroscythe comes in. You can just go ham with one Lurantis, clear that, and yes, you can only use this once per game, but the odds of your opponent setting up another massive Yveltal are much less likely. It's really difficult to get like 2 of those things going under item lock. And Lurantis can easily deal with one of them, which heavily negates a lot of the problems that you could otherwise face. So, in that sense, it's a really, really safe card. And again, I talked about this a lot with Vileplume before, but it's kind of no fuss. You're not doing anything super complicated with it, and that's what you want with Vileplume. You want simple stuff. It attacks for a single basic energy. It doesn't matter if you get rid of all your other energy. It's such an easy like cost to pay. So I think that's where people are mostly going to be going with this kind of synergy. So I think it's a really good card. I think it's one of the best GXs that we've seen, if not the best. I think we're all going to have to keep our eye out for it. So the next one I wanted to talk about was Shiinotic. There we go. Yep. So Shiinotic down here has the Illuminate ability. So once during your turn, you can search your deck for a grass Pokemon and put it into your hand. Now, again, you might think the synergy with Vileplume is also kind of cool here, because you're like, well, I can't play Ultra Ball under item lock, under item lock, so I may as well have something else. So let's say run a 1/1 line of this guy, and then instead of having to search out, all your stuff turn 1, you have less pressure on you, and you can start searching out Pokemon every turn under your own lock. And the idea is pretty attractive. I know Rory has told... I'm going off what Rory's told me, because he's tested this deck way more than I have. And he said he's not a huge fan of this. Like, it's fine. It does boost consistency a bit, but not by a considerable amount. And early game, you'd rather be spending your Ultra Balls on Shaymins. You'd rather be spending your level balls on Glooms and Oddishes. So, it's not really that great early game unless you just physically draw into the pieces of it. Also, it's not level ball searchable at 100 HP. This makes it more difficult to get out. This means you do need to commit an Ultra Ball to it. It's also got a 2 retreat cost. Not very pretty. Especially if, like I'm saying, you're running it with like Vileplume and Lurantis GX and stuff like that. You're not going to be running Manaphy and Water Energy, and the infamous pop-up has returned. But you're not going to be running Manaphy and Water Energy like Vileplume Toolbox does, which means it's even harder to retreat this guy. The attack's not very good either, not that it really matters that much. I don't know. I think it's a cool Pokemon, and I think people will definitely try it and probably get fairly positive results with it, but it's not going to like be a staple, I think, that it might seem at first. And again, if you're not using Vileplume, look, Garbodor's everywhere. You're not going to get much use out of this. We've got tons of ball search cards now. They're just outclassing this thing. The only reason you would use this, I think, is in a Vileplume-based deck where you also had Grass-type attackers. And like I said, in practice, so far the conclusion is that it's not a great or necessarily a perfect solution. I've done a few sort of opening hands with it myself, and again, I sort of agree that I'm not finding myself needing this as much as you would think. You could just run a really heavy line of it so you draw into them more frequently, but that sounds like a terrible idea. You're sacrificing space for resources and things like that at that point. So, we'll leave that out for now. I think it's a cool card, though. I don't know, maybe someone will get better use out of it than I do. So, we're moving on to... I'm just going to go in terms of type. I'm going to organize it like this. Tsareena. I know I shouldn't pronounce the T, but I'm going to because I'm an idiot. So Tsareena. This is one that's had sort of a lot of people talking about this. Grass type stage 2. Once during your turn, when you play it to evolve one of your Pokemon, look at your opponent's hand and discard a card you find there. That's such a good ability. Like, I can't begin to describe how good that ability is. It's not even there are attacks that do that, and like if there was an attack that did that, I would consider it a really good attack. This is an ability. Like, you can do this and then attack. You can use this and then, like, use Astonish. You could play, like, 3 Tsareena in one turn and just wipe your opponent's consistency off the board, and then use something like an Apom fiddle around to make sure they don't draw into anything good. And I think, obviously, that's going to be the main synergy for this thing. You probably want to combine this thing with things like Houndoom EX or Apom or what's that thing? Curlia, it's Fortunate Eye, where you base things that let you look at your opponent's like top card of their deck and then assess whether or not it's a good card, and make some kind of awkward ass like Sableye Garbodor sort of thing, but in standard. Now you get to the bigger issues, which is that Garbodor is a thing, and we don't really have an elegant solution to it. I mean, you could sort of lead off with Beedrills and then try and Tsareena your opponent out of options, but by that time I'm sure they would have had a board set up with a bunch of attackers, and if they're playing Garbodor, they're probably playing Yveltal, and Yveltal's not really weak to that kind of stuff once it's already got a bunch of energy on the board. And if you're committing all this space to Tsareenas and Beedrills and stuff like that, what room are you finding for Crushing Hammers? And if you're finding room for those, are you finding room for consistency? And these are the things you need to ask yourself. I think the fact that it's stage 2 means, like, okay, yes, you can get this in play turn 1. It's just Garbodor is a huge problem for this thing. Because even if you get, like, a turn 1 Tsareena, your opponent goes Garbodor next turn, and, like, let's say they have 2 good draw cards out of their opening hand. You're like, oh, well, I'll get rid of one of those, and then they go ham next turn, they get the Garbodor in play, and now you can't use any more Tsareenas. That's not going to end well for you. So, to me, that's the biggest issue with it. As well, though, I think the one deck that I am going to try is combining it with this little Pelipper down here, who has the attack delivery for double colorless. You return one of your bench Pokemon, all cards attached to it, to your hand. So the idea is I'm just going to run like 4-4-4 Tsareena and, I don't know, 3-3 Pelipper, and then just, I don't know, like 2 Beedrill EX, and then just keep hammering, like getting rid of Floatstones off Garbodor, and then just throw down like a bunch of these and pick them all back up with Pelipper and stuff like this. I don't know. It sounds terrible. It's low priority right now for me in terms of coming up with decks to play. I don't think this is as good as it first looks, even though this ability, yes, is just extremely powerful. Did I have any more notes about it? No, that's really all I had. Yeah, and requires testing as well, because we don't really have anything like this in the format right now, so there's nothing we can sort of compare it to directly, so for now it kind of has to be pushed to the side. Anyway, Lapras GX is the next one I had on my list. I don't have too much to say about Lapras GX. Again, I think it's a more solid GX than the ones we've seen so far. 190 HP on a basic is fantastic. We're talking Zygarde range now. That's just really, really good. Weakness to grass, not a lot of people are playing grass right now either. May increase with the Luranis GX coming out. Who knows? I think this is, in a sense, slightly underwhelming, but it gives way to some other things that I'm currently thinking of right now. So I really like the idea of Articuno in the format at the moment, because I think with the Fury Belt you're able to take 2 prizes on both Baby Volcanion and on Froakie and Frogadier, and even a Trubbish if you somehow can. So I think I've been kind of in my head, I want to create a deck that gives me an excuse to sort of go back to Water Toolbox and start using these like speed Articunos and grab a bunch of easy wins against Volcanion and Greninja. But obviously, you know, you need to sort of think about other matchups too. And I think maybe just 3 energy for 160 might be enough. It's like Aurora's GX, but with a lower energy cost. It's like Ash Greninja, but it does 30 more damage. It's got a solid amount of HP. It's got a weakness that barely no one's hitting for. This might just be enough. Like with a Fury Belt, you're hitting 170 with 230 HP. With Kukui, that's 190 if you can get it off. Like, that's pretty great. You'd probably want to run things like Olympia to reset this attack. I think that's probably going to be proved to be better than Ranger. Rough Seas as well is a great card for healing, and Yveltal struggles-ish against decks that are able to heal. So, I don't know. I feel like this might just be enough. It's not a fantastic attack, but like it might be the bare minimum that you need to bring that kind of deck back. So I'm definitely going to test that out. Wishiwashi. I don't know. I'm just going to read the ability, right? 30 HP, basic Pokemon. Once during your turn, discard all cards attached to... You may discard all cards attached to this Pokemon and return it to your hand. You have to use this ability. You cannot use this ability during your first turn or the turn you play it. I have no idea what kind of uses I could come up with for this. I was hoping there'd be another Wishiwashi printed that was like... I don't know, it did 50 damage times the number of Wishiwashi in your discard pile or in your hand. And you could just like play a bunch of Wishiwashi and Buddy Buddy rescues. But no, it's just once during your turn you can just pick it back up. And you'd think, oh well, I can move a bunch of damage to it to heal, but it's got 30 HP, so you can't do that. I really don't get the point of this card, so I want someone to think of a use for it. Please hit me up if you've thought of any cool uses for Wishiwashi. That's all I wanted to say about it. Is Muck next, or did it have something else? No, I had Vikavolt. What do I have to say about Vikavolt? So you can sort of see how I prepare for these things as well. Feel free to read my notes if you want. There you go. There we go, Vikavolt. Okay, so stage 2. Ability, once during your turn, search for a grass and a lightning energy in your deck and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. The biggest issue I have with this is that, not Lantern, but Charjabug is not a grass type. Grubbin is. If Charjabug was a grass type, it would mean that we could use Forest of Giant Plants to get this thing into play. As it stands, we'd have to use Rare Candy, which is more viable than it was last season, given that there's a big lack of item lock at the moment. It's still quite... It's not ideal, though. It's still a very difficult way to get, and slow way to get something into play. A 3 retreat cost is stupid. It can literally fly. This should be a free retreat. I don't care. This really should be a free retreat. But I think this ability is super strong. Again, Garbodor is a thing in the format at the moment. We do have to consider this, but I don't know if you're prepared to just go ham with Beedrill for the first couple of turns until you pray that your opponent runs out of Floatstone for some reason. The big things you can set up with this, I think, are... Let's see, we have the list here, yeah. Mega Venusaur. His attack cost, do I have a Mega Venusaur on me? I know I have one somewhere around me, but I could just Google it. But I think it's like 3 grass and a colorless. And obviously that colorless could be paid with a lightning. So there you go. That's like, turn 1, you attach to the Venusaur. Turn 2, you Rare Candy into Vikavolt, use the ability, and attach to the Venusaur, and hey, there you go, you're all powered up. So that, I mean, in theory could work. I think I'd rather just use Lurantis if I did want to play Venusaur, and I think if anyone's gonna be successful with Venusaur, they're gonna be also using Lurantis. Yeah, I think this is just outclassed by it. Magnezone as well. You're not limited to just 2 energy in a turn. Like, if you have 3 energy in your hand, Magnezone can attach all of them. You are restricted to just the 2 energy, and obviously it doesn't combo as well with great lightning attackers like Raikou or with Pikachu EX. This does mean you could run something weird like Mega Venusaur Jolteon. It doesn't allow you to tech Jolteon into stuff, so I like that it gives you 2 energy types and creates more options like that, but I still don't think it's going to be suited for the format right now. Ho-Oh EX as well attacks for a grass, lightning, colorless, so there you go. This is one way to power that up. And then if you ran Smeargle as well, you could like attach a lightning and then, second coat to switch it with a water in your discard pile or something like that. So that might be a fun way to play the deck. Again, I still just don't think this is a card built for the format that we're currently in. A lot of these Sun and Moon cards seem to be built for a slower paced game, which is where I think the game will be inclining to in the future after the next rotation. It feels like Sun Moon On seems like it wants to go back to sort of a more search-based engines rather than draw-based engines. And if we come to that part and there is no major item lock or ability lock in the format, then yes, I think Vikavolt's obviously going to be very strong. This is just very, very good. But until that day, I think for now we have to sort of wait it out. Muck is the next one. I don't like this as much as a lot of other people because I can't think of any great decks to put it in. The ability is each basic Pokemon in play has no abilities. So it's Garbodor, but you don't need to put a tool on it. But, it has a 4 retreat cost. I'm probably going to need to put a Floatstone on that anyway. So why would I want to just restrict basics when Silent Lab already does that so well? Like, it already does a perfect job of that. The only reason I could see you wanting this in your deck is if you somehow had a stadium that you absolutely could not remove, like, I don't know, Forest of Giant Plants, Rough Seas, I don't know, some kind of deck that was just dedicated to one particular stadium, wanted to shut off opposing basics abilities, but also didn't want to shut off their own evolved Pokemon's abilities. that's such a specific list of things for it to be, for you to want to play this over Garbodor. I don't know. Again, maybe in the future we see this card and we're like, okay, now it's good, but I think as long as Garbodor's around, it's just going to be strictly better. I don't know why you would want to use Muck instead of Garbodor. Where have I... Yeah, no, you still need some. That's all I've written. Those are really my short thoughts on it. It's just, the artwork's great. Okay, this thing looks amazing, but Garbodor's such an all, like, multi-purpose kind of thing. And I know a lot of the Pokemon at the moment, like, abilities are mostly on basic Pokemon, but, you know, then go and play against Greninja and get your ass handed to you. You could play this and that Giratina promo that's coming out, but hey, that's a basic Pokemon with an ability, so you kinda can't, because this'll shut it off too. I just don't see the point. We have Sinalab, we have Garbodor, they're both very good. I don't know why we'd need Muck in addition to that right now. Again, planning for the future maybe. What else we got? What was next on the list? Lunala and Solgaleo. I'm just gonna see. I'll scroll down to Solgaleo in a sec. This is again kind of the case of it's a stage 2 with a great ability, but it's a stage 2 and it's an ability. By the time you get this thing out, your opponent probably has a Garbodor in play, and that's just the reality of the format that we live in right now. And if they're not having a Garbodor in play, you've given them enough time to set up a bunch of Greninja breaks, or they've got Volcanions hammering through you. Like, the two decks that don't revolve around Garbodor are really fast or take advantage of you taking ages to set up. I do want to point out a few things. First of all, it has been ages since we got like a Aromatisse type ability, and I like that. I do love these kind of abilities. And maybe in Expanded it opens up more options, maybe in later formats it opens up more options, but right now I can't see Psychic Transfer being that great. Moongeist Beam is 4 Psychic Energy, which is a lot, and a cool sort of side effect, your opponent's Pokemon can't be healed next turn, so you do play around Rough Seas in a sense like that, which is pretty nice. Lunar Fall GX is a great attack. I love this right now. Knock out one of your opponent's basic Pokemon that isn't a GX. We are still in a format where EXs are everywhere, and just being able to point to something and say, that's dead, is just so good. And take 2 prizes for it, because you can target EX with this. You could target like a huge Yveltal that your opponent's built up and be like, yeah, kill that. That Volcanion on the bench, kill that. Like, that's amazing. So I really like the attack. It's just, I don't... Again, we're not in a format that's this slow. I think by the time you set this up, we just sort of... It would fall. It would crumble. What else have I got written on here? Yeah. The GX attack is fire emoji. As you can see, my notes are always extremely professional. Again, and as well, do we have them here? They're not pictured here, but Cosmog and Cosmo M aren't anything to shout about either. You don't have any great attacks to be talking about while you're building it up. Oh wait, they're here. Okay, yeah. Draw a card and switch it to the bench. Nothing amazing there. The other, I know I'm skipping a lot of stuff here. I just want to get to Solgaleo, because I think this one has a little more potential. I think that you can potentially run them in the same deck and have something completely stupid, like where you use Solburst GX turn 2, if you get super lucky, and you grab out a bunch of Rainbow Energy and Psychic Energy. I can't see that working too well, but, you know, give it a shot if you want. So, Solgaleo GX, Ultra Road. Once during your turn, you may switch your active with one of your bench Pokemon. It's like Rush In, but strictly better in every conceivable way. That's a great ability. Sunsteel Strike, Metal Colorless, 230, and you discard all energy attached to it. But it does 230, which is so big. This is just an amazing number. And obviously the GX attack, 1 metal, search your deck for 5 energy cards, attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. So yeah, you could potentially use Solgaleo GX and Lunala GX in the same deck, because they evolve from the same stuff. I think that sounds super clunky. I think one of the better ways you could use this is actually combine it with some of the dragons, things like Tyrantrum EX and Giratina, power them up that way. Also, metal Pokemon in general, like, it is a metal energy. You could get things like, I don't know, Genesect DX powered up like this. I think the fact that this doesn't necessarily rely on its ability makes it a lot more viable than Lunala right now. I do like this attack. This is just an amazing piece of setup. Sunsteel Strike is a really cheap cost to pay for, for the crazy number that you're actually hitting. And with maybe even some energy switches or something, you could get it powered up super quickly and you could start hitting this number really fast. I don't know. I quite like this one. Again, stage 2 makes it really difficult to consider playing. And again, like, we're talking about decks that don't use Garbodor to shut off the ability. Oh, Volcanion doesn't use Garbodor. Oh, it's weak to fire. So, and then Giratina, or Greninja, I mean, would probably have a field day with this thing because it's slow and because it'll be ages before it starts attacking. And by the time it does, Greninja, even, not Giratina, will probably have a bunch of breaks in play. So, right now, I just can't see this being much use. But I think if either of them are going to see play, Solgaleo is definitely the one I'd be looking at first. What we got here next up was, okay, Passimian. I gotta go all the way back to the fighting types now. And again, I'm probably skipping over stuff. The set review in full will be out when the cards are out in English. I will get Rory on for it, as I always do. But for now, I'm just going to pick out the stuff I've played with and the stuff that I think has maybe potential or is getting talked about a lot. And I have actually tested some Passimian. So, 110 hit points. For 1 fighting energy, does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And team play for a double colorless does 10 damage plus 30 more for each Passimian on your bench. So it is a non-EX that attacks for a DCE, and therefore I wanted to try it out because that's how easy I am to win over in this game. It's pretty cool. I like it to an extent. The first way I tried this was with Carbon Break and strong energies, so that, and obviously, like, Baby Mew, the Fates Glide one. Is it Fates Glide? Yeah, the one everyone put in Night March when it came out, and then was like, oh, we kind of don't need this. Because I wanted to get the most damage out of team play that I could. I had Regirock EX on the bench and stuff like this. It was a pretty cool deck. I just didn't see it having that great matchups across the board. I even ran Kukui in it and catchers, so I could try and pick off Shamans easier. And Fling was a cool attack to finish stuff off as well. My biggest issue was Fling, first of all, cannot hit the active. You cannot just drop a strong energy on this thing and go 50 to the active. Because if you could, that would fix a bunch of math, I feel. But it has to target the bench, and that's very frustrating. 110 HP is a solid number. With a Fury Belt, you're up to 150. That's great. You can probably tank a hit. Which is really, really nice in a non-EX to have. Because you cannot say that about Vespiquen or Raichu. And obviously, you can also increase its damage output with Fury Belt, which, again, a lot of non-EXs can't do right now because they're stage 1s. So that was attractive. So the second way I tried this was to sort of make Raichu bats more consistent. I took out all of the bats, and I just ran 4 Passimian and 4 Puzzle at Time. The Puzzle at Time are so good because now I can run Catcher, and I can run Kukui, and I can basically hit 180 without needing the bats. The Bannock can still keep Fury Belts offline if I need it. It worked out really, really well, actually. I don't know if it's the optimal way to play. Maybe the flexibility of the bats is better, but I think if Garbodor's still running around everywhere, Raichu is pretty good because you can hit 180 thanks to Kukui. I'll get onto Kukui in a minute, which I really, really like Kukui. But so my idea was that this was sort of just a secondary attacker, so if I was going up against like Darkrai Tina, I could just hit the Darkrai's for a crazy amount of damage. Because obviously Darkrai is weak to fighting. There aren't a lot of fighting types with splashable energy costs, Gallade being one, but you have to maxi for it, so I figured this might be a little easier. And of course, if you're going second, you can get off an attack turn 1 with this thing, because if you start with Mew or a Passimian, you can just team play and do not a whole lot of damage, but soften things up for later on in the game. So no, I really liked Passimian in that deck, and I think I'm probably going to playtest that a bit more to see how far it goes. But I can't see that concept being top tier or anything like that, but I think it's fun, and if you're going to play Passimian, pairing it with Raichu was what was most effective for me. So, what's next? Oh, Raticate, okay. Raticate. I get to talk about another Raticate. This is great. I love talking about Raticate. Where is he? There he is. Alright, I'm just pointing this out because people have been talking about it. Evil Mandate for DCE. Search your deck for a number of cards equal to the number of Pokemon on your bench and put them in your hand. This will require testing. Lots of testing. Because it's like Talonflame, but it's a stage 1. We don't have anything like that right now. First of all, I want to point out that regular Raticate has 60 HP. This is 120. He is so fat. Like, holy crap. He's doubled his size from overeating, which is insane. I like the affordable attack cost on this. I've heard some people say put it in Rainbow Road, so that, I don't know, if you get end to a low hand size, or it counts as a secondary type, it's something you can sort of attack with. You can tank a hit with it maybe. If you get end to a low hand size, you can get your way out of it. I guess that's the theory on it. Personally, if I got into a low hand size with Rainbow Road, I'd probably just Sky Return instead, which is a way better use of a double colorless in my opinion. I feel like there's just so much N right now that setting this up takes too long to warrant to sort of... You have to be prepared for the risk that it's all for nothing, that your opponent just ends your hand away and then kills your Raticate, and then all of a sudden, oh, it didn't work, I lose the game. I think it's just too much of a risk right now. But, you know, he's still pretty cute, I guess. I know a lot of people didn't like his design. Speaking of not liking their designs, there's Alolan Persian. What else we got? Okay, Skarmory. There we go, Skarmory. This thing looks insane. So it's a metal type, 110 hit points, basic. Double colorless, discard all special energy in play. Yours and your opponent's. So there's two sort of sides of this. One is, damn, that's really cool. And it is. It's really cool. The big things this could be good against, I think, is like Giratina and Yveltal. I think Yveltal, to an extent, can definitely play around this, though. Like, obviously, it's a deck that sort of uses double color as well, but it's not a deck that has needs to have like 3 or 4 of them on the board at the one time. I think that's easy enough to sort of work around. The other thing is that if you're not playing this with Garbodor, Magearna will stop this from working, and Giratina, Garbodor, like Quadtina is a deck where you think this would be really good, but that's a deck that runs Magearna, so that'll prevent the effect of the attack, and it means you can't get rid of any of the energy. I think maybe you could even try and tech this into like an Yveltal deck if you want something weird for the mirror match. It's not even going to be good, I don't think, against like Raichu or Vespiquen, because like I don't think you very rarely have more than one DCE in play at a time with those decks. Every time you attach a DCE, you assume it goes next turn. Nobody expects them to stick anyway. So committing an attack to getting rid of a DCE seems just like a waste of time to me. And it's not really going to counter those. So right now I can't see any super good uses for it, but it's just such an inherently powerful attack. At some point this is going to be like a major card. Not maybe a major card, but it's going to catch you off guard in a tournament or something like that. I think it's just very viable. Right now, I'm not sure what it necessarily helps you against. Like I said, maybe some people will tech it into Yveltal to sort of help them out with the mirror match or something like that. I don't know. I'll see. I get it's again, it requires a ton of testing. We have nothing like this in the format right now, and people are going to be trying this out. And maybe someone's going to find a way that it works. I don't know. But I think definitely pick up some anyway, because at some point this is bound to be good. Like, this is just such a good attack. What else we got? Dragonair. Okay, I'm so glad I get to talk about this one. Oh wait, I skipped over the colorless Pokemon, did I? No, dragons obviously come before colorless, Joe. What are you talking about? Dragonair. So, for 1 colorless energy, during your next turn, attach as many energy to your Pokemon as you like. Now, I'm not going to talk about this too long. Like I said, I'm going to have sort of a deck analysis discussion kind of video coming up later on this week about Dragonair, because I have some thoughts on it that I would definitely like to share, and I'm going to sort of articulate them a lot better. In that point is, though, I tested it out, I've been playing with it a bit. This is a good attack. This is a really good attack. It's not that difficult to use it, and then immediately afterwards just go completely bananas and have an unholy amount of energy on your board. It does happen. It's very easy. We do, like, Professor's Letter is a card that exists, and that just makes this thing so good. Also, it's not restricted to basic energy. Double colorless, double dragon, all count for this thing as well. The biggest thing I'm pairing it with right now is the Dragonite from Roaring Skies that takes 2 prizes, an extra prize when it takes a knockout. Again, if you want more information on this deck or you want to join the discussion on it, Probably Wednesday that video is going up. Do watch it, I recommend it. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff if you're into Dragonair. So yeah, again, I just think this is a really good card. I'm not sure what the ideal partner for it is right now, but this attack, make no mistake, you can definitely get as much use out of it as it looks like you can. It's not a gimmick. You can definitely put this to good use. So what else we got? Oranguru, yes. Probably one of the biggest talking points of the set. I know a lot of people have been saying this thing's going to be good. I would be inclined to agree, especially after Shaman rotates. I think this is a really solid card. First of all, it has more HP than Shaman and a less splashable weakness. There's a lot of lightning types that you can just throw into decks to try and hit weakness on Shaman if you really wanted to. Not a lot of splashable fighting types. And also, why are you going out of your way to kill Orangurus? Who cares? It's a non-EX. Instruct, once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 in your hand. The biggest thing about this is not necessarily that it's once during your turn, but that's great, don't get me wrong, but it's that you don't have to play it from your hand, which means it combos extremely well with the new card called Nest Ball, which lets you search your deck for a basic Pokemon and just put it straight on your bench. So obviously that doesn't work with Shaman, because Shaman needs to be played from the hand. But at Oranguru, you can search for it and then activate the ability, and that is very powerful. I think post Sun and Moon we could see this thing seeing a lot of play. Right now, I could tech it in as a one-off in a couple of decks. From what I found with it so far is that you don't need high counts of it either. It doesn't take up loads of space in your deck like Shaman would, because you can use it once per turn. You could just say, I'll take one Oranguru, and I can Nest Ball for it in there. It's on my bench, and I can use it every single turn. That's pretty great. It means you don't need to be running super high counts of Shamans anymore. You could just run one Oranguru. And granted, it's nowhere near as explosive as Shaman, and it's certainly not a replacement for Shaman, but it's a different kind of draw support. It's a non-EX, and yeah, it's ultimately not great with Garbodor being running around everywhere so far, and it's sort of difficult to get your hand lower than 3 cards. That's a pretty small number that you need, but I think for the decks where it does find a place, it's going to be extremely good. Better than Octillery, I would even say. And even the attack's not that bad. 3 colorless, it's 60 plus 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. That's a solid attack. You could finish stuff off with this. You're doing more damage than Sky Return, let's put it that way. So, alright, last Pokemon is going to be Gumshoos GX. This is one of my favorites that I've seen of the GX Pokemon so far. Ability, once during your turn, look at your opponent's hand. And the GX attack is 10 damage plus 50 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon, and it's 1 colorless energy. This thing's going straight in Houndoom. No question about it. I think this is going to make Houndoom. Coupled with Team Skull Grunt, I think these 2 cards are going to make Houndoom very, very good. And I do want to put more practice into it and get a list up for you guys at some point at the end of this week, because I just think this is definitely going to be one of the decks to watch out for. We've seen Houndoom increasing in play a bit more. The biggest thing that it's been held back by is that it has kind of shitty matchups against Greninja and Volcanion. I think Gumshoos and Skullgrunt could fix that. Maybe not Volcanion. Maybe I'm being a bit ambitious, but I think it's definitely got a much better chance now. This is such a good ability. Knowing what's in your opponent's hand is just amazing knowledge, especially for a deck that relies so heavily on, do I hold this hammer or do I sycamore it away? You know, that kind of stuff. Especially with Skullgrunt coming out, it's like, oh, do I go to our Flare Grunt this turn, or do I sort of chance it and go for the Skull Grunt? You don't have to chance it. You can look at your hand and look at their hand and see if they're in a good position. Knowing when to end or not, oh look, they have a dead hand. I'll just not play this in. I think this is just such a great partner. And the attack. Another big issue that can plague Houndoom is towards the end of a game, if your opponent just gets up an Evoltal or a Mewtwo, Mega Mewtwo, with just a ton of energy on it, and you're out of disruption cards, now you have a way to kill it with just a single basic energy. You just come in with this thing and do a stupid amount of damage, and then you just win. It's such a good attacker. It's such a good card. I'd even be putting it in Wailord and stuff like this. I'm absolutely going to be picking up 2 or 3 of these things. I really, really like this. And also, just to sort of drive home the point, Yungoos, the basic that it evolves from, does have a very respectable 70 HP and a 1 retreat cost, which is what you want out of it. It's not going to be like some kind of crappy 40 or 30 HP Pokemon that dies instantly to Sky Return. You can probably even take a hit early game with Yungoos. Oh boy, that was a lot of talking. But I still got 3 more cards to cover. I'll just scroll until I get to it. Quick one to point out, you can now run 4 Cheren, 4 Tierno, 4 How, and expanded. Go nuts, people. Go nuts. Okay, did I want to talk about Timer Ball? I don't think I want to talk about Timer Ball right now. I just want to talk about Kukui, Nestball, and Skullgrunt, because these are definitely the best trainers we've seen. Kukui, I'm loving this. It's like, Giovanni was cool, but the biggest issue with it is it felt like your turn was over after you used it. Like, you couldn't Giovanni and then draw more unless you wanted to commit to a Shaman. There are times when I'm like, oh, I want a Kukui, but I also still need to hit double colorless. Like, I can do the extra 20 and still hit the double colorless, especially in the late game when you've got a thinner deck. As someone who plays a lot of non-EX decks, this has just been a really nice asset so far. I've been putting 1 or 2 into a bunch of different things. I really, really like it. Do not write it off just yet, even though it sounds somewhat underwhelming. We're not in a format where damage modifiers are exactly everywhere right now, so I'm really enjoying playing this thing. I think it's a really cool card, and I would recommend to everyone to try it out. It's just 20 extra damage can help with a bunch of different mats, and the fact that it still continues to draw for your turn is just great. So, that's really all. Nestball, like I said, I think for the majority of decks, we're still going to be seeing Ultra Ball because Shaman is a thing. But going forward, Oranguru makes much better use out of Nestball. I think even in things like Houndoom, where you don't necessarily want to be using Shaman to go really explosive, you can be using Nestball to sort of not have to Ultra Ball away like a Crushing Hammer. Or like, you don't have to Ultra Ball away your resources anymore. You can just play Nestball and search for a Pokemon instead. Again, I'm going to try and get a list up by the end of the week because I want a more concrete idea of what that list would look like before I show it off to you guys. I think this is just going to be better in some decks, but I think for the most part, we're still going to be seeing Ultra Ball and Shamans. And finally, probably, I think the best trainer that may have seen in a long time. I know that's a big call. This card, like, I haven't tested it yet, so I could be wrong, but this seems so good. Team Skullgrunt, you look at your opponent's hand, discard 2 energy you find there. That could be 2 double colors, that could be 2 double dragon, that could be 2 any energy. It doesn't have to be basics. This is just insane. It's a really, really good card. Again, like I'm talking about Houndoom, and like against Greninja, for example, you don't want them using their abilities, but you know, they always return the energy back to their hand, which means you can't Team Flare Grunt it off their active. Now, you can still get rid of it. If they, like, Moonlight Slash, you know there's water energy in their hand. It's gone. You can do this. You can... I just love this so much. Like, again, sort of trying to make sure that your opponent doesn't have options is a big part of playing Houndoom or Wailord or any of those kind of decks. And expanded, even things like Seismitoad can probably get a lot of use out of this. And knowing that your opponent's not going to be able to attach energy next turn is like basically as good as a Flare Grunt a lot of the time, if not better. Because if you can combine this with Crushing Hammer, that's potentially 3 energy that you get in one turn. Enhanced Hammer, even better. You don't have to rely on a coin flip. You get to look at your opponent's hand as well. Hand knowledge can be super important, but it's never really been attached to a very good card before. Like we've seen it on Pokepuff Hand Scope, which was awful. Psychic's Third Eye, none of these cards have proved themselves to be very good. This is an effect that is very good and lets you search your opponent's hand. I just love everything about this. Even the full art looks great. Can we get the full art up for a second here? Next to full art Lily, which is also brilliant. Actually, you know what? I like all the rarities in this thing. I know a lot of people, especially like, you know, full art Pokedex is pretty great. But yeah, can we get the art? Yeah, let's get it up there. Super high. This is just so good. I love the concept of this card, and I can't wait to try it out. But I think that's going to do it for this week's Woopercast. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back every week and at some point. I don't know what day anymore. But yeah, thank you for the support in the podcast to everybody. We're almost at 30 episodes, which is nice. Hopefully I enjoy an even bigger growth of people come 2017. So again, hope you all had a good New Year. Hope you all had a good Christmas, if that's your thing. Wrap coming soon. New Let's Play coming soon. 2 deck analysis. I want to get 2 up this week. There will definitely be one on Dragonite at least coming Tuesday or Wednesday. So anyway, yeah, once again, Facebook.com/Woopercast, YouTube.com/Woopercast, SoundCloud.com/Woopercast, also on TuneIn and Stitcher. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.